I just don't know what the countdown is.
Yeah.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to what we're calling this hour Master This. You can see it above us. Um, we are trying out some new tech, so we apologize in advance if this doesn't ends up being a total garbage fire. But we would love some feedback on the new layout, camera quality, if you like the overlay. We're trying out some different brands of DNI. So
Yeah.
today we're going.
Learning as we go along with Corona.
Right, exactly. A lot of YouTube research to get this thing to work.
Yeah.
Anyway, today we are going to be talking about two types of power: authority and influence, also known as overt and covert power. Um, we're going to start by talking a little about authority, pros, cons, what that's all about. Then do influence, pros, cons, and then end with the balance of the two and how to work with them in your organization or your company. So, Adi, you want to kick us off talking about authority? What we mean by that?
Sure. So the word authority, what it means, especially in organization, is that you, for whatever reason, have the power to instruct others, to lead them somewhere, to ask them to do certain things, to hire or fire, whatever that means in your particular role. It means that you have power over other people because of your position in the hierarchy of that organization, that you were granted some kind of authority over others, and that they are obligated, due to their role differences in the organization, to follow your lead. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think you basically got it. It's essentially it's like structural power, right? Like I'm your boss, you got to do this because I say so, right? I'm your direct report, things like that. It's stuff that's usually overt on paper. It's in the org chart. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, your boss has authority over you, and you might have some authority on somebody who is lower on the chain of command from you. Now, influence is a little different type of power within an organization. A person who has influence in the organization has power due to their, maybe due to their personality, something they know. They can influence others because there's a history of them being successful in something, or they have proven to be a valuable team player in a particular way. Those are not mutually exclusive. You can have authority and influence. However, they're not the same. And it's really important to know the difference between them. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what are some pros and cons of authority? Like, what are some ways that it does work and ways that don't?
so I think authority has a lot of pros. There's a lot of comfort for people who have an authority figure, knowing that they have someone to turn to, that somebody will make decisions, that somebody will represent them, that they have kind of a parental figure almost within the organization. And having the authority is really important. You want sometimes to tell other people what needs to be done. It's a way to progress a project, to work toward a goal. If you have the authority to make something happen, you can also help people resolve disputes or conflicts within the organization. You will have the power by your authority to take on and on steps toward wherever it is that your particular organization needs to go. Those are very important, simple, powerful tools that one has when there is a group of people who need to work together. You also have the power to direct a fork in the road in a way that has the knowledge from the bird eye view of somebody who is connected to other people who are above, who have a long-term goal in mind, and connected to the short-term goals. So sometimes, due to time, due to information management, not everybody can know the whole map of where an organization is going. And you having the authority to take those forks in the road is very important. Otherwise, the flock will be just rambling. There will be a lack of organization within that project or that goal that you're pursuing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what gets added, right, is like sometimes a decision just has to be made. And authority is a great way to do that. I think what authority also does, which is not often spoke about, is that it actually insulates people on the lower levels or on the employee levels from mistakes. You know, part of being in an authority position as a leader, as a manager, as team member, team leader, is that the responsibility is actually on you. I think as a good leader, as an honorable leader, the failures of your team are your failures, right? Because it was your job to motivate, to manage, to get the thing done. Some leaders I've worked with that have been more on the neurotic side or needing work side often blame their employees, right? Make it their fault. The idea of like leading from the back, right? Like blaming the army in front of you instead of blaming the general. That is when authority kind of goes wrong, where you have these leaders that are trying to skirt their authority and are not able to actually step into the power that they hold. I think another.
You're touching.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Cutting you off. Taking my authority. I'm just thinking that you're taking us toward what might be some of the weaknesses of that type of leadership. What are some cons of having authority? It comes with responsibility, which is often great and sometimes can be painful, can be complicated. You might be the target of anger or resentfulness because you make the decision, and you're going to have to bear the brunt of mistakes being made if you had taken that fork in the road and it didn't work the way you hoped or the way the organization hoped.
Absolutely. And I think having authority, to wrap up this section, I see it as very important, especially in traditional corporate cultures, even in some of the more, quote, progressive cultures in the mental health industry. There's some talk of like completely removing hierarchy or completely flattening everything. In my experience, I don't think that works. I think there has to be a balance because the buck has to stop somewhere, right? And you talked about information management. The idea of knowing who to talk to about certain things, about certain projects is really, really important. If roles get dissolved or they get too muddy, then a lot of that information becomes hearsay. A lot of it doesn't get put where it needs to go. People don't take responsibility for certain projects or certain roles. So the idea is not to go all in on authority and also not to dissolve it, but to actually have a balance, which we'll talk about in the third part. So this moves us to our next topic, which is influence, which is a little bit more of the soft skills. Adi, you want to kick us off with influence? What do you mean by that?
Sure. When you influence others, when you have the power of influencing others, you are able to not direct them where you want to go, but invite them to where it is you want them to go. You have the capacity to change their opinions, to change their attitudes, to create a movement from one point of view to another. And then you are more inviting them to join you where you are going rather than command them, so to speak, to go with you. Influence is when you have the power to make a difference, make a change in the organization or how people behave in the organization without exerting that power of authority. Not because you were granted a hierarchical power, but because you have a relationship, because people trust you, or because for whatever reason they are interested in joining you with your point of view, with your understanding of what needs to happen.
Yeah, I think influence. If we talked about authority being kind of the short term. You got to make a call. You got to get it done. You got to ship the product, whatever it is. Influence I see as much as like it's more like a cultivation. It's more of like a long term. I think one of the main outcomes that you can see from a leader that really has this influence skill mastered is employee retention. If people really enjoy working and they feel like a family and a unit and a team, and everyone is, for the most part, copacetic and working towards a shared mission, you're going to keep employees. And, for those business people out there, you're going to save money and not having to retrain people over and over again. Influence is a way to kind of create those more cohesive bonds that I believe and I've seen really create that spectacular work, right? Like going from just kind of like hitting the deadline to really excelling in whatever your chosen field is.
Right. And when you are working with the power of influence, it's an invitation for conversation. You are going to converse, to use the power of your words, to see if somebody is willing to see things from your perspective and do things in the manner that you believe is best. When you do that, you reduce that negative aspect of hierarchical authority because the other person will most likely not feel resentful. They'll most likely not feel coerced to take a particular action. They will feel like they had a choice and they would feel like their voice have been heard. Because if there is a conversation, there is a back and forth. And even if at first they didn't think like you, they didn't want to do things the way you thought was best, they might come to your side of things because you have influenced them. You showed them a point of view that was compelling enough for them to say, yeah, that's actually a good idea. I think influence is a way of really creating a change from one inertia movement to another, and authority is kind of like pulling it in a more, in I guess, a lack of a better word, in a more authoritative way.
Yeah, it brings me to the idea as you're talking of both the biggest pro and the biggest con of influence is that it starts to break down the hierarchical structure, right? And the way that you're saying, just to recap for the audience, it's good in that it creates a more sense of equality, even though job description equality actually isn't there, right? But it creates a sense of equality that everybody is at the table, everybody has a voice. It actually can create new generative ideas. It can create a way that people that are in a position lower can actually affect change in a real way, by talking about an underlooked aspect of the business or something like that. Where it gets slippery, where it gets dangerous, is when influence starts to dissolve the hierarchy significantly and starts to really break it down. The easiest example that me and Adi talked about before is gossip. Gossip is a way of influencing people that can really be toxic in an organization. And oftentimes, if you have, try to draw it out, if you have someone that, at this level, at an employee level, that is good friends with someone that is a couple levels up, and they're gossiping back and forth about someone on their team or even the middle management person, it can really, honestly destroy those people's lives. Because that middle manager may never get to advance because the boss is constantly getting negative information about them. Employees might get shifts that are worse, or they might be put in more dangerous conditions, or working on just crappier projects. When influence goes too far, it can become very, very corrosive and can lead to dangerous patterns like gossip, like playing favorites, like pulling punches, lying, deception. A lot of that can start to manifest if influence is the only way of organizing an organization.
It also creates a culture of unsafety, because if you know that the leadership is operating solely on influence, then anybody with a strong enough opinion, with a more compelling argument, or maybe charm, something about their personality, can sway the direction of the organizational path from one to another. And I think employees want to know that even though there could be some variation, that there is a goal and there is a known road. It's very destabilizing to be pushed and pulled because opinions are changing, or because there is some personal connection that can always derail a particular path from continuing being followed. So sometimes we do need somebody with authority to say, this is what we're doing. And for the people that following that leader to know that they're not going to be swayed, that there's not going to be a constant change. Some consistency does come with authority that's very valuable for people. You want to know that there is potential for influence, and that influence can stream upwards or downwards depending on who is trying to influence. You do want to know, however, that if there is a need, somebody does have the authority to make a decision, even a tough one. And I think part of what's difficult is people who do have the power of influence might have difficulty respecting authority, especially in times of stress or change when things are different. I think a lot of people right now maybe didn't think about it in those terms, and as we're describing it, might have noticed that this is something that's happening in their organization. There's so many short-term decisions that need to be made when we're working from home, when things are being done through the internet, when we're not physically together in the offices or wherever it is we're working. All these changes are happening. And so those who have influence might have more power in a situation like that. And you might really crave somebody with authority taking away that kind of more lucid, more foggy kind of decision making that comes with influence, and let you know what's really going on. show you how the hierarchy is actually thinking about these short-term stressor that we're all facing together within the context of the long-term goals of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you're saying because it's an important point that it's not about having one or another. I think a really competent leader, a masterful leader, if I do say so myself, would be able to balance both, right? The idea is being able to wield both of these tools in a competent, effective way and to be aware of the dynamics that are at play, which is difficult, right? I mean, it's a skill that is not overtly trained, although there is literature and things around it, but it's something that requires a lot of care and a lot of delicacy, and it's things that often people, as they're advancing, up the ranks, are not aware of. Like, we're not taught that. We're often trained to be technicians first before we're trained to be managers. So many new technicians, many new managers have amazing technical skills, but lack almost all these managerial skills without proper training. So let's go over some strategies or some things to keep in mind when balancing these two things. You want to kick us off?
Sure. I think it's really important if you are, for whatever reason, going to use the power of authority, that you will make emotional space in yourself and in the community that you are managing for some negative emotions to be present. Because a lot of time when somebody has authority and they're making a decision and they are letting others know that this is how it's going to be, other people might feel some anger, some resistance, and that's okay. That does not mean that it's going to stay there forever, especially if the decision was by and large the right decision and they are going to get to a goal and there'll be some satisfaction. That hostility might go away. The capacity to allow people to be frustrated, to see some disappointment on people's faces without being too derailed will be really, really helpful. So knowing that when you are delivering a decision to your employees from an authoritative position is really important. They might be really happy about it, and that's great. It might be what they want to hear. If it isn't, if it's more complicated or some would like it, some wouldn't, allow yourself to be a little bit of a sponge for some negativity. You don't have to carry it forever, hopefully.
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
one skill.
To build upon that, I have a feedback process that I use with the people that I consult with that is, I think, is right along this line. So the feedback process that I use, it draws from DBT, is the first is sticking to the facts. So when asking for feedback from people or delivering feedback, the idea is to be very precise about what is happening and what happened in the dilemma situation. To at first remove emotion from it and really try to boil down what's happening. That is an authority type intervention, right? Like, you're trying to just understand mechanically what happened. The second one is actually to listen to the feelings, right? Listen to how it made them feel, how it is moving, affecting their motivation, how it is affecting their wanting to get promoted, wanting to go above and beyond. That's more of an influence type intervention. And I think it's really important to keep those two things separate so that you're able to collect data in both ways, right? The next one that I like people to focus on, this is specific to organizations, is to try and trace the communication channels. So noticing, like, you sent me an email that said this, and this is what I did about it, right? Or I heard from so-and-so during a lunch break, right, that this was what was really going on, and trying to create a culture of transparency where both of those things can be balanced. So looking for both authority communications and influence communications at the same time in order to fully grasp the situation. And the very last thing, which is difficult for leaders, is to not do anything about it. So it's very easy in those meetings when it's emotionally charged and it feels like something has to happen to make a decision right away. I always encourage leaders that I work with to either seek consultation, talk to other leaders, talk to your leadership team, and actually take a moment to digest all the different information before deciding right there in the moment. So separating out the information gathering phase from the action phase. And you can take action like the next day or whatever, but the idea is
or even in an hour, take a minute. I think that goes to what I was saying. It's really a nice interlocking thing, because if you are able to tolerate some negative emotions, some distress, some anxiety within your employees, some displays of displeasement, then you'll be able to take the time. If you can't tolerate it, you might become reactive and try to fix the problem, so to speak, too fast. Most of us, when we are faced with some emotional content, we become at least slightly overwhelmed. And once all that is settled, we might have a clearer view of what might be the best decision. So giving yourself, if you have an hour, if you have a day, even better, to really digest what was going on and kind of notice within yourself that you were faced with something that was not that easy for you to digest. And also just a bunch of information is not that easy to digest. If people have a lot to say about it and they have a lot of thoughts and feelings, you just might need to recap it for yourself to understand what's important, what's less important, what is something that needs to be considered, and what is, I don't know, the fluff of what was said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is more of an emotional communication and less of an actionable item. And the second tip I have is to create a relational map or relational chart. So most companies have an authority chart, right? They have an organizational chart of who works for who and all that kind of stuff. But I would encourage during strategic planning meetings, and again, this is something to do either with a consultant or to do as a leadership team, is to overlay that map with the relationships as you perceive them, right? So drawing connecting lines of who is really close, connecting lines of who don't like each other, right? Who don't talk to each other. If there is any kind of favoritism going on, if there's any kind of mentorship going on, and just getting it out there, bringing the covert to the overt can be incredibly powerful. And looking at a map like that might explain many of the problems going on in the organization when you see it all laid out like that.
Absolutely. I love that idea of a map, and it could be so different than the hierarchical map. And just seeing things like that visually can be really surprising. Even though you might know all that, seeing it in front of you might really mirror to you how the organization is operating and will help you make decisions that people will join you with. They will be excited to maybe partake in, rather than have something very chaotic going on and the need to use either influence or authority in an ineffective way in order to get your way of things. I think it's time for us to maybe recap what we were talking about today. So we were talking about two major ways in which power is displayed and used in organization. The first is authority, the hierarchical type of power, and the other is influence, the more fluid, emotional, connectable type of power that we see in organizations.
Yeah, and then we went and we balanced, we showed a couple of techniques, ways to give and receive feedback, ways to tolerate the displeasure or the anger coming at you, and how to create a relational map to help with your organization or your company moving forward. So that's our time. I'm Mark Azulay. This is Dr. Adia Vivi. We'll be doing this every Friday. Thank you for those tuning in. Bibi, I saw that you're joining in. It's good to see you. Anyone else who is watching this, please like, comment, share, do the things. We'd love feedback as we're out here developing this offering. We'd also like topics that you're interested in hearing us talk about. We got a wealth of information, so we'd love to just be able to wrap and spin on whatever that we have.
Yep, come to both our Facebook pages. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We are eager to hear from you.
Okay, everybody. Take care. Have a good weekend, and we will be seeing you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.